All right, everybody, let's call the meeting to order. As always, your first order of business is pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just before we obviously, last meeting we said some goodbyes to some old friends, and today we get the pleasure of welcoming new ones. Cecilia, welcome. Great for you to be here. Really looking forward to all the contributions. Heard up with great things, so welcome.
Thank you.
With that, recognitions.
We don't have it. So we were going to try to bring the boys soccer team, state championship soccer team.
Oh, yeah.
Scheduling conflict with the coach, so we're going to do that in January.
Great. Okay.
They'll still be the champions.
They will still
They
be
will
the
still
champions.
be the reigning champions.
They'll be playing different games though,
Right.
different sports.
Public audience. Let's see that. Great. So committee reports and communications. Cedar.
Alright. So for Terrafil School, this past Friday they had their theater performance of Olympus with over 30 student participants, and their second graders are currently in the midst of their People Who Make a Difference unit, where they have several guest speakers come in about working in the community, such as firemen, policemen, museum workers, etc. At Latimer, this will be a common theme throughout, but they're participating in the CCMC PJ Day fundraiser this Friday, which they, according to Mr. Luzetti, they have raised over $40,000 over the past 10 years through this. So hopefully, hoping for another successful event. And they also have winter concerts for band and choir this next Monday evening. For Squadron Line, the faculty and staff have been doing daily December spirit days, such as fun socks, dressing fancy, dressing like a snowman, etc. Again, the CCMC PJ Day fundraiser. This Thursday they're having a gingerbread house decorating sponsored by their PTO. And they're also having a school-wide Shine assembly on Monday, which will focus on the SEL competency of social awareness and listening. And then for the middle school, once again, the CCMC PJ Day fundraiser. Their winter orchestra concert is coming up this December 11th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium, and their band concert will be December 16th, also at 7 p.m. And then they're also looking forward to their volleyball classic with the winning student team facing against the staff. And finally, at the high school, we've got winter sports pretty much in full swing, tryouts wrapping up this week. Again, the CCMC PJ Day fundraiser. Senior, my fellow classmate Marissa Capinetti, has recently been honored with the Girl of the Year award for her work raising over $120,000 for cancer research for CT Children's Care, or CT Children's Hospital. And she recently spoke in Hartford over this weekend, and there's a Fox News story about her that you can look up. She's pretty great.
I heard that speech was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And people reached out to me and said, you have to figure out a way to get her in front of the staff at the right time.
Yeah,
She's
pretty incredible.
really inspirational.
Winter concert season. We have the instrumental concert tomorrow night, which I'll be performing in, and then also our choral and orchestra masterworks concert next Wednesday, which I will also be in. And then also the Save a Life tour, which is scheduled for SHS on Monday, which is a safe driving awareness program to inform and educate about the consequences of poor choices and reckless driving. And that's
Thanks.
It's a comprehensive thing.
Yes, and capstone, we have a
And
lot of
I have
dozen
my own.
students.
Yeah, we have capstone, which has been all this week for the students who started their projects last spring, including myself.
Congratulations, for everybody.
So welcome again. So I don't know if anything you want to share with us tonight. Obviously, there's just no pressure. So. Okay. Josh.
I'll just echo the Terrafil play was really good, and speaking for Jen, we were both there, we both had kids in it, so thank you to Mrs. Brown and everybody there. They've done a really good show. As far as committees, the next communication committee is not until January 9th, so no update on that one. I'm sure we'll talk about the finance committee stuff at some point, so sure, that's all.
just a welcome to our newest board members, and that's it for me.
I think the last curriculum meeting was held, I don't think we've done a recap of it, have we?
We have not.
So it was a great meeting, it was burgeoning with information and activities, so we did not get to our last subject matter, and we'll do a recap of AI coming up in our next meeting. But we talked about UConn. Mr. Flaherty is creating a writing course proposal for the UConn ECE, which is a college course credit. And so that was very exciting to hear his ideas and his thoughts, and always good to have those opportunities that come. He's done the work for him, which is great. In our math updates, we talked about the math acceleration study that they're doing now to see what the benefits of the sixth graders coming to junior high to do math and the tangent way that goes. So there are a lot of pieces of that they're going to talk to. We'll hear more about that. Simsbury High School, we talked about extensive survey results for spring and I'm not reading what we wrote because it was a while ago. This meeting was in November. Ages ago. And the question about testing and how to make sure that the students can learn from the tests, the mistakes they make on the tests. And so we had a lot of discussion about that. I look for more information coming down the road. And we impressed upon them that we like the kids to have access to their tests. But the IXL platform that they're using now is something that we heard more about and how it works assessment-wise. It seems to be more comprehensive than STAR ever was, so that's kind of exciting. I think it'll be helpful and great for our students. So I think that was basically our meeting. Did I miss anything?
I think that's a great summary.
Thank you. So,
Just a reminder to families that tomorrow is an early release day for the purposes of professional development. That's it.
A final step in the approval of the recently negotiated teacher's contract is it comes before the Board of Selectmen for a final action and vote, so I will be going to their meeting next Monday night to answer any questions that they may have. But we anticipate a positive outcome.
just a couple of quick notes. One, as Brian mentioned, or Josh mentioned, we had a finance meeting. Just really kickoff of the budget season. Really started, as we always do, kind of where we are with fixed costs, and we'll get into more of that. So, good discussion. We'll get into it. Also, obviously, next week is the tri-board, but so congratulations, budget season's here.
I would just share that this morning we kind of kicked it off internally with three of our principals come and present budgets to our cabinet level, get the discussions going. I thought they were very well thought out and people understand the context we're working in. And that meeting for the tri-board is the 16th, 5:45 in the program room.
And then just a quick, I haven't really talked about charter in a while, just want to let you know, we had another charter revision meeting last night. We're wrapping up, we're probably at the end of the real substantive discussions, the meat, shall we say. And now we're going back and just making sure, cross-referencing the right section numbers, I'll call all of that, like just making sure it says exactly what we all agree that it should say. Honestly, I think at the end of the day, we did a couple of things. There was a lot of requests at the beginning to further delineate between the board of selectmen and the town manager. I think we've done a good job of at least making some of those lanes a little clearer. And then just functionally, if you really read the charter, and I know you guys do religiously, it can be very hard to read. It just doesn't read well at times. So I think we did a pretty good job of just rewriting, not necessarily new text, but reconfiguring it and making it maybe a little bit more easier for everybody to read. So if you saw a red line of it, there would be a lot of red lines, but at the end of the day, it's really not huge substantive changes. So just want to let everybody know. We should hopefully be wrapped up in about a month. We're kind of going into writing the report, and then we'll take it over to the board for their review. So just want to throw that out. Great. Next is the because it's the election of officers. In your packets, you have
Sorry,
Hey,
Lynn.
Steve, you're over here, wait a minute. You're right here. Welcome to the Board of Education.
9 hours at the Cape Conference in my.
You know what, we already mentioned that. We definitely mentioned that.
But like I said, in your packet, there's some how this should flow. Typically, as we do, starts with the secretary position. So I'm gonna open the floor for nominations for secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education. Are there any nominations?
I would like to move that Jessica Parisky be nominated for Secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Great. Are there any other further nominations? I'm gonna close the nominations for secretary of Simsbury Board of Education. Do I need to vote? Do I need to close it? Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Please.
I'll move that Jessica Parisi be elected as secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Okay.
Second.
Great. All those in favor of Jess as the secretary, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Now I'd like to open the floor for nominations for vice chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
I will move that Jennifer Bachelor be nominated for vice chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Any other nominations? Great. Then I'm going to close the nominations for vice chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Move that Jennifer Bachelor be elected as vice chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Second.
Great. All those in favor of Jen as the vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Now I'd like to open the floor for nominations for chairman of the Board of Education.
I move that Jeff Tyndall be nominated for the chairman of the Board of Education.
Are there any other nominations? Anyone? I'm gonna close the nominations for chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
And I will move that Jeff Tyndall be elected as chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you.
It's the smoothest thing
Slowly but surely.
Next up is the approval of the November 11th meeting minutes. Can I get a motion, please?
I will move to approve the minutes of the November 11th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Personnel.
Two items, one that requires your action, and it is an announced retirement for the end of this school year. Laura Post is a longtime educator of more than 30 years, and the last 15 of them here in Simsbury. She's currently a grade 3 teacher at Latimer Lane, and has decided that this will be her last year in education. Motion is there for your consideration.
I'll move that the Board of Education accept the retirement of Laura Post effective June 30, 2026.
Second. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
And then for your information, we completed the hiring process. You may recall, we had a 6th grade teacher who took a job in another district recently at the start of the school year up at Squadron Line School. Katie Cumbres is actually just completed her student teaching this semester with us. So she came in, which I think she was in grade 4 for student teaching, did a fabulous job, and we had a very good long-term substitute in there who finished till Thanksgiving, and Katie walked herself right into a job on December 1st. So congratulations to Katie as a first teaching job at Squadron Line.
Congratulations.
That's great.
That's great.
Review and approval of the 26-27 calendar.
That's me. So there is a calendar here for your consideration. The calendar has been prepared in accordance with any state law guidance, our established policies, as well as the Simsbury Educator Association contractual working days. It also considers the now 26 year since the calendar advisory committee.
No, it hasn't been.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
2009.
Yeah.
That's 16 years.
Yeah.
16 years. I've advanced it. It's been a lot for me too. Can't do basic math, the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, that's not a good sign. And it's in alignment with those recommendations as well. So as is typical, we will start the last Wednesday in August, and pending no inclement weather, we will have our last day of school on June 8th of 2027. You will also note one difference of this calendar to years previous. That's due to an Equity Council recommendation to also include Indigenous Peoples' Day along with Columbus Day, so that is noted on October 12th of this calendar. There is a motion there for your consideration.
I make a motion, we accept the calendar for 2026 and 2027 school year.
Second.
I said,
Any discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to the approval of the 26 Board of Ed meeting schedule.
Pretty straightforward, yeah.
Not much we can do.
No, any adjustments that we do, we'll notify as we come up upon it, but this is just standard meeting schedule, moving forward for the second half.
I move that we accept the Board of Education meeting, 2026 meeting schedule as outlined in the board exhibit, in this exhibit. I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Excellent. So now on to information and reports.
All right. We are gonna invite our Director of Pupil Services, Katie Krasula, to present tonight. And in past years, we have done both the special education program review and the special education budget on the same night. We thought it would benefit the conversation to separate the two. So Katie's here tonight to talk about some of the work and kind of celebrations and conversations that we've had over the past, couple years about special education and how some of these resources have played out to our benefit. And she's got a stack she's gonna go through, and I know we'll have time for any questions and conversations you'd like to have. And she'll be back with Neil mid-January for the budget portion.
Great.
Thank you for having me this evening. It is nice to kind of finish 2025 off, being able to really share a program update and really some celebrations of the work of Pupil Services. I think this structure is really allows us to talk about all of the good work going on in Pupil Services and certainly come back to some of the celebrations that I know we've talked about that the board has supported over the last few years. So start off with some celebrations. I'll be able to touch upon our annual performance report and some student achievement, be able to talk through a Pupil Services strategic plan that's really coinciding with the district strategic plan that was adopted last year, and then come back to what is our work this year around teaching and learning within Pupil Services, and finally recap you with some data of just, again, who makes up the Pupil Services department. So celebrations, I really want to acknowledge our programs. It's been a big conversation both in this board as well as in the various town boards. Our New Path program at Two Farms Village continues to come along. We are expected to start there and move our students in at the start of the second semester. Certainly there's been some delays with construction. After going through Farmington Valley Transition Academy, it's to be expected. Anytime you are bringing a program in a home to life, it truly is going to have its bumps, but I have no doubt it's going to be the right place and really be the right home for our program. But also wanted to share that the program has started. We have our new staff in there. We have students. They are in the modulars at the high school, but it's really just been a great place for our students to start to rebuild. They have been over to the program. They picked out paint colors. They have seen the floors. They've been a part of this process, and in some way, having the semester for them to become a community while embracing this new home has really been welcomed, and I think it's awesome because their voice is going into the work that's being done right there. Are they excited to move in on January 22nd? Absolutely, and we can't wait to get them in there. And our other programs, I mentioned Farmington Valley Transition Academy, FVTA, they are in year 2, but this is the first year of having the full building open. You know, if you remember, that kitchen and reception area, instructional area, didn't open until really about April of last year. So they have their full building open over at Riverdale Farms. They've really been accepted into that community, whether that be at Little City or Health Tracks or a variety of places among Riverdale Farms. It is just awesome to see. We had our first graduation there. Riverdale Farms, the community was so accommodating. We set up in the parking lot, had a big tent, and you heard the speeches of our students and you looked around and it was like, wow, this is the home. This is where FVTA is supposed to be. And then certainly our intensive learning needs program that is in our elementary schools at Squadron and Tooten Hills. We've talked a lot about our growing intensive learning needs population. We supported and added a few teachers over the past few years, coordinator. The community there just continues to build and grow. They have had field days, both fall and spring last year, monthly communications, opportunities for parents. It's a bucket filler. You go there and the kids are being embraced, and I truly believe our staff, our parents, and our students are continuing to define that community and make it a really solid and supportive learning environment for our students. And lastly, we had a state visit for general supervision and monitoring of special education. That is something that on a 3-year rotation, districts are selected to have people from the state, the Connecticut State Department of Education, come in and do some observations of what special ed looks like in Simsbury. And we were selected. They were here about 3 weeks ago, and they called us a model district. I take that as a huge compliment, and they truly were so impressed with our staff, our students, the buildings, and what that looks like. I had a conversation last week with the person that kind of heads that up from the state, and was just continuing to hear more. Excited to hear their finalized feedback in upcoming weeks, but again, just certainly wanted to share that with the board that, again, having the state recognize Simsbury's programming was really great to hear.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Certainly in your slide deck, you'll see some celebratory pictures. Got the kids over to New Path. Again, that excitement, our FVTA opening and working down at the state's attorney's office. There's some pictures of our ILN field day and activities that are taking place, and you'll see a variety of staff, students, and our communities really coming together. So thank you for your support. And certainly just celebrate all of the good work of the staff and students here in Simsbury around pupil services. Okay, part of that goes with the state recognizing that for the fiscal year of 24, we have met the annual performance report. That is for the 23-24 school year. We are awaiting the 24-25. But I will say that for this 23-24 school year, that was a full move into the Connecticut CT-SEDS special ed data system that opened probably 3 or 4 years ago. We were fully implementing CT-SEDS, so the data they are pulling to meet the 17 indicators is coming from that data system. And because of the consistency that data system brought, a lot of districts did not meet requirement. We continue to meet requirement, and so I take a lot of pride that based on that state systemic improvement plan, our pupil services department continued, even with more monitoring of the data, to meet those requirements and to do what we need to in order to really fulfill pupil services and the purposes of IDEA. going along and moving forward into some of our student achievement and growth, I have prepared for you some achievement of our special education students across 5 classes. These are graduation classes, and wanted you to be able to see kind of where they started with their Smarter Balanced assessment of those students in that class that were at or above goal, and then how they've moved forward. As you can see, almost every class that has taken SBA multiple years continues to show growth in their performance. I think it's really important to note that you've seen as much as 20% growth. And when you look at that class of 2030, which are your current 8th graders, you will see that they had that drop, but there's been growth in their population. So I think, again, it's something we're looking at, monitoring, but overall really impressed with the continued growth of our special education population in regards to their ability to be at or above goal in the ELA portions of the Smarter Balance assessment. For math, it's a very similar showing in the sense that for 3 of the 5, we also, for certainly the class of 2034, they haven't had a comparable year. But for 3 of those 4 that do, we're continuing to see that they are closing that gap. Again, I think there's been some growth in that class of 2031 when you look at the math results, and it's really a variability of 2 students. So it's something to look at, something to really think about in regards to our math performance and goals and objectives for those students, but very solid continued growth there in math for our special ed students at or above goal. So celebrate the work of our teachers that they are doing. A lot of this is the work of the special education model that we're using, service delivery, a lot of collaboration between our general education teachers and our special education teachers to ensure that we are closing that achievement gap, which is by and large made up of our special education students. Okay, so want to take us into a little bit of that teaching and learning work and start with the development of a pupil services strategic plan that will kind of cover the work of pupil services, the staff and the people within pupil services work for the next 4 years. Why are we doing this? Why are we creating this plan and making sure we have a roadmap? 1, because it's just a smart idea. 2, because we really want to align with the Simsbury Public Schools strategic plan that was adopted last year and ensure that we are, same way that our district strategic plan is outlining and creating that map, that pupil services has that plan and vision, again, so that we are addressing that achievement gap of our special education students and we're continuing to address those needs and to provide the support to our students and to our staff that work with those students in a really strategic manner. This also allows us to highlight the actions and outcomes of the program review. If you remember last year, around this time, we completed an outside program review on pupil services in Simsbury. This was an opportunity for outside independent contractors to come in and really take an open book look at pupil services in Simsbury. How are we doing from both a fiscal responsibility component, our programs, and our professional development, our support to students, and our support to staff. Really, let's take a look at all of it. And there were some really good highlights and also actionable outcomes in that our strategic plan allows us to say, how do we prioritize? How do we make sure we're addressing those and we're not forgetting this important work that was done last year that will just continue to allow pupil services to have that continuous improvement cycle around making sure we continue to be really right for kids. So what's the summary of that strategic plan? Again, wanting to highlight kind of the 4 goals of our district strategic plan. You're going to see that within pupil services, we want to continue to focus on strengthening our programming, making sure we've got those sound programs that are going to support students with complex needs, and also to improve the instruction around academic, social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. How are we addressing those achievement gaps that we see in those areas between our general education students and our special education students? We also want to continue to build really inclusive and collaborative school communities with the strong mental health support. So that behavioral component, I think it was probably 2 years ago, we talked about mental health within pupil services and how we see that. The strategic plan really allows us to target continued clinical support and work through our clinical department in supporting kids' needs there. There's a lot of PD plans within that strategic plan to make sure we are recruiting, developing, and retaining highly skilled professionals. Again, I come back to that state visit. They're commending us on our teachers. We have great staff here. We want to make sure that we continue to build their toolbox and that they have the right training and ability to work with kids to close those gaps. And then lastly, really, I come back to our new path, our FBTA, our ILN, building efficient systems and infrastructure to support long-term program quality, ensuring that we can support kids in our community, in our district, to the best of our ability within their least restrictive environment or their best place to be able to find success and growth. From that big strategic plan, I'm going to narrow it down and say, what's the work of year one? What are we doing this year in pupil services? I think this aligns very closely with the work of the entire teaching and learning team. But this is really, what's that bucket for pupil services? So in regards to student growth and success, you'll hear a little bit more in a little bit around structured literacy, continuing to develop our ability to support complex reading needs and provide systemic instruction around reading and literacy. We're doing a lot of professional development with our teachers around structured literacy. We actually, tomorrow's half day, we have the state coming in to talk to us a little bit about progress monitoring and high quality IEPs, continuing to make sure that not only are we seeing growth in our students, but that our individual education plans or their IEPs are matching and demonstrate high performing goals and reaching for growth and progress for our students on those documents. Vertical alignment of services. We really want to make sure that we have consistency for our students between our buildings, and that our teams are talking and making sure that those services that are happening in one building continue based on that individual need in the next, and that we're talking and making those plans accordingly. And then lastly, the specialized programming, just continuing our work in strengthening our specialized programming to meet individual kids' needs. Culture and climate. We are doing some de-escalation training, so continuing to support both special education teachers and general education teachers in understanding behavior and how to de-escalate challenging behaviors. We're doing, again, building those program communities, clinical resources, looking at the roles of our school psychologists and our social workers, and transition practices, again, making sure our kids are really, when you think about that vision of a graduate, we are really prepping those kids and ensuring that their transition goals and objectives align with those pieces. So giving our teachers tools and ideas and building their capacity around that. Professional development, I mentioned some of these, but really, I want to highlight our non-certified para educators and the professional development. We work closely with human resources to ensure that they have a mixture of both in-person and highly engaging professional development with some of our related service providers. So this year they're going to hear from assistive technology specialists. They're going to hear from our director of instructional technology and library media specialist did a huge PD with all of our para educators. Occupational therapists, they're really getting some good dynamic professional development. And then we work with human resources to also provide some asynchronous professional development that they can do with modules of interest to them, kind of using their PD time to learn in small groups, individually. So just making sure that that's a key focus. And then sustained investments. That's something we've talked about in pupil services, is making sure that we have the good balance between fiscal responsibility and doing what's right for kids. And I think we do that really well here in Simsbury. But part of why we do that well is because we keep an eye on this. So continuing with our New Path program kind of focus, looking at our preschool programming is something I want to, our partnership with the DCE, and how do we continue to meet kids' needs while strengthening that partnership. And then certainly looking, one of the focuses this year is to look at our extended school year programming. That's summer school that is required through a student's IEP, and ensuring that we have the right practices in place to make that the best and most appropriate program. I'm gonna pause there. I've talked a lot and gone through several of our slides, but before I go into kind of our context, are there any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, the first column on student growth and success, just what's the interaction, maybe there is none, but I feel like there would be some between looking at the IEPs you have like in scope at any point in time and that strengthening specialized programming. Is there a connection there where you look at the IEPs and kind of see what programming?
100%. So really, you know, that IEP, that individualized education plan is what's driving the kids programming, the singular kids programming.
Yep.
When we strengthen that specialized programming, we're saying, okay, who's the population of kids with similar needs, and how do we make sure that that umbrella is not just meeting all of their needs, but can be individualized to those individual kids, if that makes sense. So it's taking those documents, making sure we have those connected lines, and part of that high quality IEP allows us to strengthen our specialized program. If we've got the right document that has the right goals and objectives around that kid, then we can say, okay, this is what this program needs to do, because all of these kids have these similar types of goals and objectives. How do we make sure we've got the right progress monitoring, the right assessments, all of that in instruction and materials and tools, all of that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
You do right, that's so good about it's efficiency that can save money for the whole district, so that's important to really appreciate you doing and taking the time to make sure you
Of course. Want to go into a little bit of data. So typically this is kind of where we start to make that turn into what's the data that is special education, who are we as a program right now, that helps to define our big buckets around budget. Certainly not going into budget this evening. You know, that'll be when we really look at those big buckets. When I say big buckets, I'm talking out of district placements. That's a large budget driver. Transportation is a large specialized transportation for students that require that. Contracted services, the work we need with specific specialized people and programs for student needs. And lastly is the staffing component. That all of the data that I just want to kind of review today is our current makeup of pupil services, like who are we, what's making up caseloads, what's our total numbers. In January, we'll come back to the specifics of those big buckets, but just the data I'm going to take you through tonight is kind of who we are. That we'll come back to that story when we talk about budget in January. So have some of those pieces that I want to take you through, and certainly have time for questions at the end. So I know we've talked, Neil's going to talk a little bit about enrollment later this evening and those futures. We had some of the 10-1 reports earlier this year. Want to kind of bring some of that, who are special services as of 10-1 this year, and how do we compare from an enrollment lens. So certainly you can see that if you look at total number of students 7 years ago to now, this is all students. There has been that decline that's been discussed. When you look at the total number of special education students between 7 years ago, there is that growth. And this is 10-1-19 is the same year I've used, I think, 3 years in a row. So I'm trying to keep some consistency as we report that out. What I will say is if you look at the top of that slide, we're seeing some stabilization in regards to our special education population from last year at this time to this year. So we're stabilizing that incidence rate, is what we call it, the percentage of students in Simsbury that require special education supports. But certainly that continues to be an increase in our population since 7 or more years ago. Okay, 17.5%, still very much in line with the state average, and is consistent with our incidence rates over the last few years.
Okay, question there. And it may be a question that really can't be answered now. I'm just curious because it's projecting a little bit. But when New Path is fully up and functioning, right? Again, it's a hypothetical. Of that 17, let's say that number stabilized, of that 17, 18%, how much would you envision could be housed at New Path?
So I think capacity, when we've talked about capacity for New Path, we've always said somewhere between around 25 students. I don't know if those will all be Simsbury students. So it's, if you think about, we have 721 students K-12 that require special education students. It's a smaller percentage, but these are also our students that right now require that out-of-district placement and or types of students that require that out-of-district placement that come at an average of $100,000 per placement. So there's this responsibility and discussion around environment and program to support them in ways that creates that more restrictive environment in their community. And that's the key piece, is in their community.
That's helpful, yeah, that makes sense, and that's why that number's, because this is the whole range, anybody with an IEP, right?
This is anyone from kindergarten through really 22.
Two questions, these are just students with IEPs, not 504s, right?
Correct.
But 504 also falls within your purview, or no?
504 is a general education.
Okay.
Sue and I certainly share some of the supports and our school psychs, for example, oversee our 504s at the elementary. At the secondary level, that shifts to school counselors. It's accommodations, and it stems from any sort of diagnosis that can be impactful to a life activity. So it's more in that purview of not educationally impactful, but requires support and accommodation, not instruction. And that instruction that is specialized and individualized to a kid is what creates special ed.
Gotcha, so those children are not included in these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just define for me again what incidence rate means?
Yes, so incidence rate is our percentage of students of the total student body. So right now, as of October 1st, 17.5% of students in Simsbury have an IEP. So it's the percent of student requiring direct instruction through an IEP. So I want to, this is an area where I really want to acknowledge the board and the support they've made over the years. I've listed our average caseload sizes. Every year we've talked a little bit about caseload sizes because it's something that's really important. What do I mean by caseload? That is the number of students that a special education teacher is in charge of to ensure they're getting that specially designed instruction per their IEP. And we've worked really hard through addition of staff to make these caseloads what they are, which is in a range that's going to really allow and maximize the opportunity for those teachers to find success for their students. So I've listed those there. They're right in range of what we'd like to see for elementary, middle, and high school. And I'm again appreciative for the ads that we've had over the past few years.
3 years ago, those statistics were 22.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago we added, at this time we were asking for several elementary teachers per building or per district. Kind of each building needed a little bit. And I think our average caseload sizes at that point were over 20. They were right around 20 to 21. And that is, I say, again, this is right now, so we're in December. I like to see those starting the year somewhere in the 14 to 17 range so that we don't go over that 20 as we have either move-ins or referrals and changes in the school year.
These students are in general classes,
Mm-hmm.
so they just are, the caseload is only at different times. You do
Correct.
smaller groups all day long, so that the caseloads aren't like, the teacher doesn't usually have 20 kids in the classroom
No.
at any point in time. And if with this drop in the numbers, we've given a lot of relief in the individual classrooms because the students there aren't as many struggling students in the classrooms because they're getting the support they need.
Yeah, so
And it's hard to understand if you're not in the program.
Yeah.
It's very hard to, you hear 20 kids in class and it's like, but they're not all there.
We've worked real hard there to try to align schedules and the student needs so we can push the special education teacher in with the regular ed teacher, so you have
Yeah,
that
when you
same
can,
instruction you talked about going on simultaneously. I mean, it's a delicate balance, because you get a new kid, it can throw things out of the mix. But a
And
lot
this is
of time,
emotional stuff too. This
time
isn't,
and energy has gone into that the past couple of years with our building-based leaders and kids.
Yeah. So again, a single number doesn't mean one student is equal to the next student. It's looking at this from an average, making sure that kids have what they need. We might have a large cohort of sixth graders in one building, and so that's primary one teacher is in that grade, making sure that they're providing the individualized support for students with behavioral needs or academic and reading and math. So it really is variable. But when you look at getting that number down, to your point, Tara, it really allows our teachers to provide that direct instruction around behavior or academics to kids' needs on a more consistent and independent, individualized
Student
basis.
benefit.
Yeah,
I mean,
they do.
average, regular students, gen ed, special ed, they all benefit from that kind of.
One question, would you attribute the disparity between elementary and high school to more identification as the years go on, or more staffing at the elementary school level? And is this a typical spread over the years?
So those are really good questions. So I would attribute the difference in the amount of resource or hours instructionally that a student requires is going to be more at the elementary level than it is at high school. We are trying to build independence and generalization of student needs as they get older. So a 12th grader that's college bound, ready to go is not going to need the same support from a special education teacher that a third grader who's still trying to learn basic phonological awareness skills is going to have, if that makes sense. So our elementary student teachers, special education teachers, are going to have more time with those students than our high school teachers, special education teachers. The other thing to your question is, yes, it's very common to see that growth in caseload as
Because of what?
kids get older because of that, yes.
Steve just asked me a question a lot more eloquently.
Oh, yeah. Take it away from him.
I was just gonna, so you're comfortable with 21 at the high school level?
Yeah, last year I think is when we added at the high school level, and I think our caseload sizes were like 25, 26. We've come down quite a bit, both with the work of the high school to make sure that they're supporting kids through interventions and it's not jumping to referral. They've got their incidence rates down lower than I've seen them since before COVID. So they're doing a lot of work around their intervention systems. Also, the addition of the FTE that was approved through last year's budget allows us to ensure that we have the additional ability to spread kids out. And so, yes.
I'm just wondering, sorry, pardon me.
Yeah.
You mentioned that these like the caseload sizes fall within sort of like a good, like ideal sort of range of like what they should be. I'm just wondering what determines that, where the baseline for what the caseload sizes should be comes from, and like how we determine what we are looking for. Ideally.
That's a really good question. I think it's really hard to pinpoint, and there's no rule book on this. For general education classes, there's some model and recommendations there and guidelines. There's not for special education. So when we put together these staffing requests over the year, we pulled average caseload sizes from other districts surrounding us with like populations. It's also diving in and talking to the teachers that are working with our students of what does this look like when you have this many students to this many students, looking at their data for growth and ensuring that we have that progress data. So it's not an exact science. It's really a delicate balance because, again, a student needs from a special education perspective are a lot more complex than a single number, but it is looking at research, it's looking at other districts and comparative data, and looking at are we meeting kids' needs and how do we make sure we are doing that consistently.
Katie, the elementary caseload size, does that number include our students in the ILM program?
No, that is my next slide.
Great
So I am going to flip us right there.
Katie, I do want to point out that Cedar asked the same question that I've been asking for 11 years.
It's an excellent question.
It really, really is. And I think we've gotten better at that delicate balance, as I called it, over the last few years. And it's come from a lot of our collaboration within teaching and learning to look at how do we get the right service delivery to these students, have push-in. That's the research piece, is like getting special education teachers into the classroom is really important. How do we maximize their ability to do that so they have an impact to all students? all of that goes into that.
I only ask because I know from experience the range of requirements and like needs for individual students and how large a range that can be.
Yeah, 100%. So at the high school, you do see a little bit of a larger range, and I think I credit that to our teachers getting students ready for college or for their transition to adulthood, because the way our caseloads are broken down at the high school, it's like kind of 9th and 10th graders and then 11th and 12th graders. You want your 11th and 12th graders more independent, more able to participate without that support of the special education teacher. So you would expect to see those differences, but again, just listed the average there. Okay. To your point, Jess, the ILN enrollment and functional academic learning programs. So just as a reminder, our functional academic learning program is for our secondary students that require that kind of complex functional academic program to support their goals and objectives. And our intensive learning needs program is for those students in grades pre-K to 6, and that's housed at Tooten Hills and Squadron Line. I did total enrollment because if you know the ILN program, we actually have 6 classrooms of ILN at the elementary. So those numbers can be broken down into the total number between Tooten Hill and Squadron are broken into 6 classrooms, 1 with pre-K, and then 5 that service our students K through 6. But total enrollment, because that was a question a few years ago, we have experienced some significant movement and growth in our intensive learning needs program. If you look specifically at the ILN enrollment numbers right now, they have stabilized. Where it is asterisk is where we added 2 teachers. That was the year after that considerable growth occurred. And we've really kind of balanced. We're seeing those students start to push into the Henry James and high school. So again, that's something that we're watching is the enrollment at Simsbury High School and Henry James for our functional academic learning program, because right now we only have 1 teacher in each of those buildings. But to our just previous conversation, even in functional academic learning programs, you're looking for students to gain independence. You are looking for them, so you would assume that those classrooms would have a few more students than they would at elementary.
So Katie, number of teachers at Tooten and ILN?
Tooten at ILN, we have 2 teachers.
6, okay, so.
And at Squadron Line, and actually I'm looking at these numbers, these are K6 numbers, we have 3 teachers for K6. So again,
So not for
nope, it's 4. It's 4. It's 4, this is pre-K, 23. So our caseloads there are right around 6 right now.
That's K through.
That's pre-K through 6.
So the ILM program is K through 6.
Pre-K through 6.
How is the functional academic learning programs different than the New Path program?
So functional academics, really, it's named because it's going to have students' focus be much more on how do they use academic skills functionally within their life. So the profile of a student in a functional academic learning profile is going to be very different from students in a New Path program. Functional academic learning profile are students typically with there are ILN students as they grow. These are students with significant autism, they might have intellectual disabilities, and they might have Down syndrome. So they're going to, what we do through the functional academic learning program is really maximize and ensure that they have functional skills that are going to allow those kids to be as independent and as successful as possible to the extent they can within their disability, the scope of their disability.
And they're intermixed throughout the schools they're in, correct? Throughout the classrooms, like.
So at Henry James and at Simsbury High School, they have dedicated self-contained classrooms. But yes, they are taking jewelry. They are taking music. We do have unified classes at the high school level. That is something that they really benefit from within PE and art. And it's awesome opportunities for our students across the board that take those classes. But these are students that really benefit from pushing their functional skills, learning life skills, learning activities of daily living. These are our students that are going to push out and have internships and across our community, whether that be at Fitzgerald or other partners. So some really cool things happen in there. New Path, you might see similar opportunities in internships, but these are our students with emotional disabilities. These are students who might have mental health needs, and it's very hard for them to be in a population of 1,200 because of their reactions or their way of handling difficult situations. They're still learning coping skills and strategies, but they might have a cognitive profile that they could be very successful, very cognitively almost proficient and whatnot, but their emotional disability gets in the way of that success, and so we have to help them develop those skills.
Great.
Okay. So just wanted to just give some, I figured there'd be questions, so some direct updates on our ILN and FELP enrollment. Another thing that you've heard us talk a little bit about, I think it was mentioned when Henry James gave their enrollment report, is this idea of structured literacy and specialized reading. So wanted to just bring some context to that and then share a little bit of data, and that's my last data point, as we kind of close out this program review. So what do I mean by structured literacy? So this is for students with reading disabilities, but really targeted needs and pinpointed structures of need under that literacy umbrella. So these are often students with dyslexia, or similar characteristics that have specific weaknesses under literacy umbrella, and they need direct support in that area. So it's a evidence-based approach to reading and writing to make sure we are pinpointing and getting that support, not just an umbrella of reading support, but really if a student has phonological awareness needs, we are targeting PA. If they have fluency and the rate with which they read, we are targeting fluency. It's ensuring that we're putting some direction to a student's reading program so that we close that gap as fast as possible, help them develop those reading strategies and skills targeted to their profile, and then move them along in success, if that makes sense. So it's a really research-based, it's centered around the science of reading, and ensuring that we're able to support students in those areas.
So is this like a SHRIPS program for the elementary school? Is this separate from?
So it's structured literacy really does align all the way from our gen ed curriculum to a student that is on an IEP because they have dyslexia. You're going to see the term structured literacy throughout. It's aligned with the science of reading. When I say structured literacy, it's that specialized support of we have a student who needs more than what the general education curriculum can provide, or SHRIP can provide, and needs that direct instruction under the scope of their IEP.
So a gen ed student who needs a little support, like a tier 2 support, would go into SHRIPS. Someone on an IEP would have this structured literacy.
They'd have goals and objectives in their IEP. It doesn't mean that the WHO provides that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wanna complicate the soup here, but I do wanna say we're having significant conversations in the district now about our resource allocation. Who has the skill sets to meet the needs of these children? Because SHRIP teachers in some cases may be exactly who we need. And in some cases, in some schools, SHRIP teachers are working collaboratively with special ed teachers to deliver this. So as we worked on some of this new collaboration and new model of push-in, there's sometimes scheduling complications. All right, how do we kind of pull together and say, maybe before we ask for I need, more staff, what does the totality of this resource allocation look like, and how do all these programs that we built over time kind of work collectively?
Yeah.
So
And
we're having some great
really good
conversations in the district now about that very same thing.
That makes sense.
really good conversations happening, and also really good professional development happening with all of those professionals that you mentioned and that Matt kind of alluded to. We are doing some real structured literacy professional development with our we've built teams of educators. It's our language arts consultants, our SHRIP teachers, again, people that are really good in reading. That is their focus. And then special education teachers, department supervisors, people that really know IEPs, giving them all the same training so that they can work collaboratively. Because oftentimes we ask our special ed teachers to kind of be jacks of all trades, right? They're supposed to do behavior, math, reading. And then we have these powerful professionals over here that all they do is reading. Let's put them together. Let's let them develop these explicit, systematic, and evidence-based approaches to reading and writing together, using their shared expertises of both
reading and special education and ensuring we have the right people targeting kids' needs to move them through and close those gaps.
Can I ask a question? I was debating whether or not to ask because I'm assuming you already have documentation on it, and I don't want to add work to a busy plate. So when you mentioned the resources and stuff, you can finally think of this. At least for me, and I'm assuming others out there, it would be helpful if at any point, again, not priority, is that you have like a journey map or like a flow chart if you have like a student comes in to like ILM, right? And then like from there, what's the like yes, no of like goes to like regular classroom or goes to like the next step, right? Where we say, yeah, they're going to Henry James on
What's
that.
your decision-making trait?
Yeah.
As far as how do you determine where a student is most appropriately educated based upon the services they need?
Yeah, just get a feel for these numbers, because it feels like you could have a child come in on ILN and just on one row, like just always stays on a path that may have them, if I'm correct, just ILN straight through to like transition academy, right? Like that someone may be on this path and then is off the path. Someone may go to new path, right? Like what's the determination as we're thinking about, because I love what we're doing with like all the thought about the teachers and the right resources and the new path and different things. But like how are we, I'm sure you already have this somewhere, how are we determining who goes where and like how are we staffed accordingly? Because I do think this all is going to be a much bigger discussion as time goes on. To Tara's point earlier, we're helping to try and caseloads and teacher resources. A classroom of 20 students isn't what a classroom of 20 students was 20 years ago, right? There's a lot more going on, so like kind of get a feel for where are these students, where are we putting them, how are they kind of staying on one path and going another. And you said like that decision tree or that journey map, whatever it may be. Again, it doesn't have to be anything specific. I'm sure hopefully it's something you already have without creating more.
So part of what we already have and what I could see kind of bringing back and providing is the continuum of services, and some of our programs fall into those services. So we've worked with all of our educators over the last several years to build the framework of what is our continuum of services here, and certainly programs are there. It would be really kind of not in best interest to say we know the kid's track. It's a 1 year. We're going to make those decisions as a planning and placement team, but we're always looking at what that student needs, what are the skills they need, and in what area would that service be provided. So if I come back to structured literacy or an academic support in 4th grade, we're going to make decisions about can that student's needs be taught within the classroom and have that special education teacher go in and participate in that general education curriculum, or does it need to be a small group because we're doing some systematic instruction around code. So I definitely we have that continuum of service, and I think what we can do is overlay where some of our programs and or instructional practices would fall on that continuum of service.
Again, I think that'd be really helpful, just get a good picture of how you can tackle that.
Yeah.
It's hard to see. I mean, I appreciate all the work you do in these meetings that we have, because every year I learn something new. And I think that's the point of it. But
It's hard to envision the
it's
structure
very hard.
visually.
It's really hard, especially because we know.
So individual.
Yeah, I was about to say there's
That's what it all boils down
there's
to.
you can have a certain flow chart for like students like journey throughout it, but it's gonna be completely different for every single individual student, which is really the difficulty with everything that you do clearly.
Yeah.
And it's gotta be flexible, because if it were rigid and it was definable simply, you're gonna lose something.
And you have flexibility in how you approach the meeting of the needs, because obviously there are many different theories and approaches, specifically with the science of reading and language learning, and how you can approach creating that literacy within students. There's millions of different ways you can approach that, and being open to that is just so incredibly important.
100%, and I think there's also the consideration of what is the parent's input, and as the student gets older, what's the student input, right? Because as we're making those decisions in those secondary grades, the student voice is really important as well, and so you bring a lot of really valid points to those decisions.
I am dyslexic. I'm a student who I struggled with reading. I couldn't read until I was about 10, I think. And so I was homeschooled up until 7th grade, and it took years. My mother had 2 dyslexic kids before me that she also homeschooled, and it took until me to find a program that worked well to create that competency in literacy.
100%. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Thank
that's a big share.
So that's an example of why we need to do this work, is to get to those individual needs. But again, where does that fall within the continuum of service and what we offer here in district, and ensuring our professionals have that experience and learning that and tools, it's really that toolbox to implement and move our students forward so that they can reach the level of independence and success that all students are capable of. So want to bring some numbers to this. We've really started to take a look at our students that require structured literacy. So what you'll see is if you look primarily at the yellow, green, and red numbers, we do have a cohort of students that are moving through with these complex reading needs that need to be looked at individually and need to be really pinpointed to their components. And so there is this is where these big conversations are coming in, is what's the best way to meet these students' needs, to make sure they have the services, especially given our better understanding and use of curriculum through Gen Ed into our interventions and then into our IEP students. So we do have a lot of students that require structured literacy right now, and are again partnering with general education to ensure that we are meeting their needs and embracing and have the right people doing that instruction.
Just ask you, obviously, the 26-27, obviously there's a bump there, right, across all 4 grades. Just any
So there's
thoughts, I guess,
a bump across all 4 grades, but what I will say is if you take a look at the green in 25-26 and then the anticipated orange, that's apple to apple. We are moving kids with this systematic instruction. So every year, if you track the yellow to the green, from year to year, and then green to red, there are kids graduating and moving out of structured literacy. So I come back to, when you get the right program to that individual kid need, we are making more than a year's growth and getting that kid back into. So that's why we're highlighting this work, is because it's important, because it's closing that achievement gap. So it's a different way of looking at our reading instruction and our IEPs that we haven't brought forward before. Thought it was important that we just brought awareness to what it is, because I had heard some principals mention it. It's a very large conversation happening in our district right now. But what I will say is, even though our data is showing continued need, we are moving kids with this systematic instruction and programming that we're doing.
Probably better. Why should I frame the question?
No, it's okay. We hemmed and hawed on this visual because it does look like it's kind of exploding, but it's really important to kind of track those kids through it.
Am I reading this correct? Like, I'm looking at 22-23, 6th graders are at 20. The next year, that same cohort is in green.
It's like 13.
And the next year is in the orange.
They were at
And it's
4.
just like
Yeah.
dropping
So
right
by giving them this is, instead of saying they have reading goals and objectives around comprehension or something very broad, we're saying this student needs encoding, spelling work, and we're going to give them direct instruction in that area, and it could be with a couple other kids that also need the spelling work, and they're getting it because of the types of programs we're using, because of the PD we're providing our teachers, because of our collaboration with Gen Ed. It's good work, and it's moving kids, and we're just continuing to broaden our teachers' toolbox around it.
It's really interesting. This conversation is very much mirroring some of the internal conversations we're having with caseload. That, hey, it's not always about the number or the trend. It's about what the individual kid needs instruction. You know, so.
Why did you? No, sorry. No, go ahead, Sylvia. I'm sorry.
Years 22-23 to 25-26. There were no kids for the 5th
We
grade.
weren't keeping that data.
Okay.
So right now, so it's a really good question. So we weren't keeping the data in regards to, like, I could pull students with reading goals and objectives in grades 4 and 5 in 22-23, but that's not indicative of were they receiving structured literacy because they had a disability of dyslexia, for example. We weren't kind of piecing that out as much, and now we're really trying to take a look at our students' data differently and more explicit to this idea of structured literacy.
When are those types of when are they typically identified as students? Does this make sense to go to kindergarten? Is that too early to identify it? Where?
It really is dependent on the student, the individual student and their profile and the significance of a potential disability. I would say a lot of times our students, they need time to respond. They need time to be in intervention. They need time to learn and develop those school-based skills. So oftentimes, I think there's a range, but that we're looking at students being found eligible with a reading disability. It's typically, some students will be identified in second grade. Some students, it's not until they've developed good self coping strategies themselves, and they do really well. But then you throw many teachers in their day, and those strategies start to break down, and we see the impact. Again, students can have dyslexia and not need an IEP. It's around when we start to see that educational impact that needs something beyond intervention is when we are actually starting to talk about those eligibility for special education.
And then I was wondering how much of that identification that you find obviously in the earlier elementary school years, how much is that is done by the in district by the schools, and more so how that is determined, when a student is determined to how it's determined that they need these requirements, and how much of that is done by the school district as opposed to for example an outside psychologist through the parents.
So it has that are this teaching team, the planning and placement team seeing an impact as part of kind of that umbrella of eligibility? Are they seeing that educational impact, and do they have that concern? Certainly then we would go into the evaluation process and whatnot. So, I think it depends on the level of how is the student doing in district. Sometimes families might explore things outside of school. We certainly have a responsibility that if there is a question of educational impact, that we are talking about intervention and intervening and understanding that student profile.
There are also flags along the way. So there are certain universal screens and markers that we do in Gen Ed. And when some of those results start coming up in a wonky way, we start looking at that a little bit differently. You usually see this uptick around grades 2 and 3 because you stop learning how to read and start applying and reading to learn. So you see another uptick there. And there's some very specific literacy windows that start closing a little bit and make some of those discrepancies a little more pronounced. So it's very important for us in the Gen Ed sense to ensure that we are looking at really important data that might flag some reading concerns. Certainly some of those are indicative of dyslexia, but not all of them are. So it's been predicated on good Gen Ed curriculum with great markers, working along with special ed, and seeing if that has to have that the educational impact that requires further evaluation.
And I think it's important also to say that this isn't new work. I mean, this is work. There has been work around dyslexia and supporting students with dyslexia happening in our district for probably before Sue was in the role in pupil services. This is really about how the continuous improvement. We're really looking at this differently. We're looking from the Gen Ed all the way through the special education continuum of services and opportunities, and the training our staff needs to be better able to support our students. Okay, that is
Thanks, Dave.
it.
Thanks, Kate.
Appreciate the time and certainly
I'll bring you back next time.
You get to come back again.
I will do that.
Thanks, Katie.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Wow, I didn't realize how blingy you were. I don't know how I missed how blingy you were.
You're sparkly tonight.
You're in the system. You and Katie are killing.
Next up for us are the enrollment projections.
So we're gonna go from a very comprehensive and complex report to one that is super straightforward, okay? So this will be brief, because our projections have come back and there's not a lot of exciting news here. They're very, very flat.
Can you
And
preface no questions any better?
This
This
is-
is very straightforward. There is, we are picking up what you're putting down. Love it.
there is a UConn game on. So we start with similar slides from our October presentation, where this is the history. So we're gonna look at 5 years and then 5 years. So obviously those board members who have been here for a while know that we've been just above that 4,000 number for K-12 enrollment for quite some time now. So within the last 5 years, highest we reached was 4104, but then did dip below 4,000 with this latest October 1st report, where the K-12 number was 3966. If you compare that number to the one in Katie's report has preschool included. This one does not. Okay, so people are going to go, I'm looking at two different numbers, but you aren't. You're looking at two different things. One's pre-K through 12 and one is K through 12. So moving forward, this is what NESDEC has said. We start, the first year is the current, so that would be at what it was on October 1st, 2025. And then you've got to think of all of these as October 1st. So what will it be on October 1st of 2026, meaning the graduating class of 27? And you can see that it is extraordinarily consistent with literally just a difference of 17 for next year. And over the course of the next 5 years, you're looking at a total difference of 39. With the why 40-50 goes up in that what will be 3 years from now, we have an extraordinarily small 10th grade class, and that class will be graduating. So you're going to graduate a very small number, and I think they're projecting a normal incoming class, and that will cause a little bit of a spike in enrollment, but not significant from a percentage standpoint. As you look at the various configurations, the K-12, I just talked about 17. So all of these are saying, what is it in the first year and what is it 5 years from now? So K-12, 17 more students, and then 5 years from now, 39 more students. In the elementary school, literally across all 5 schools, a decrease of 8 students for next year and a decrease of just 20 students over the next 5. At the middle school, flat, an increase of 9 for next year, and a small decrease over 5 years, but extremely stable. And the high school is the only place that is going to see some growth over the next 5 years, with that number of 46 students more. And again, a lot of that has to do when that 10th grade class leaves. The high school is going to see a little bit of a bump. To look at the individual elementary schools, not a lot of news to report here. You will see the biggest increase at Latimer, currently just below 500 to 521 projected 5 years from now. Plenty of capacity for 521 based on the new building. So not to worry there. And a little relief at Squadron while we figure out what's next there could be helpful. So demonstrating a decrease of 597, and you'll recall from the class size report, a lot of that is driven by the unexpected occurrence of only 3 kindergartens this year. So a small cohort for Squadron Line is going to be moving through the grades, keeping that enrollment at Squadron lower than it's typically done. A slight decrease at Terrafil, and you will see, stability at Tooten Hills, very small decrease over the next 5 years. Henry James is gonna have a blip in the middle, but end up right where it is right now. And it will go from, they're saying a height of like 680, 690-ish before the smaller cohort of, in 2030, I think they're currently in third grade, is that small cohort, if that makes sense. Second or third grade,
That's
that
what
will
I
be,
was trying to do the math on my number.
yeah. And they will be coming into the middle school so that's pretty stable, and then this is the high school projection that demonstrates that over the next 2 years, we will go down a little bit before the increase as that small class leaves. So this slide is, we always like to pay attention to our kindergarten projections because they're the most unpredictable, if you will, for the demographer. And what you can see here is the two lines, one which is the births from 5 years ago, and the dotted line is how many kindergartners entered in that year. And the little arrow is meant to show you that you're looking at a ratio between the births from 5 years ago and how many. And now that gap is staying about the same, meaning that the kindergarten, whereas if you look at 21, 22, that would be the first year people had to make a decision whether to send their 5-year-old to school with a mask. And the gap got wonky for a little bit of time before it's now stabilized. So the conclusions here are that enrollment is average is going to only increase by 8 students per year for the next 5 years. That's amounts to very little as we look at the capacity of our classrooms. It's a remarkably flat period of time. So in terms of a budget implication for that as we enter into the budget, there's going to be, in terms of enrollment-driven requests from the principals, we're not going to see anything that the principals are asking for that's going to be pushed by enrollment or very little. Could be as special ed populations. That's the different story that you heard in the other presentation tonight. But just the flat, like we have I'll use the example of right now. We have 110 elementary classrooms right now across the 5 elementary schools, K through 6. I can tell you from 5 years from now, we're going to have about 110 teachers. I'd put the range between like 106 and 114, and willing to put a few dollars on it if anyone wants to take me up on it. But that has another side to it, is that there also, when you have this flat enrollment, there's not an opportunity to get enrollment-driven efficiencies. The last time we really were able to see, as enrollment declined, we were able to capture FTE and in some cases add additional programming based on the FTE. So it's a two-sided coin, that you're not going to see budget requests based on enrollment, but it's going to be harder to find efficiencies. I showed you the thing with the K classes. I believe, with another conversation with NESDEC, that we're now in an okay place with where we are in kindergarten. We'll see how it comes over. Laura Shellman will be starting that process in January. And then we'll continue to look at, Meg Evans was one of the principals who presented, and we talk about the change, the space needs at Squadron Line every time we have to look at that, and they're real. The 3 kindergartens maybe helped a little bit, but there's still pressures we need to look at. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes.
It's just a curious one. For Simsbury High School, we're projected to fall under 1,200 kids. That's an average of 300 a grade. When you were principal,
were we 1,600 or were we 1,700?
We were about, my biggest enrollment was over 1,500, but not to 1,600.
But we had classes that had over 400 kids.
Oh, yeah, a couple. Yeah, the most of the classes that graduated while I was principal were like 375.
Not a question, Dale, just to stay with the numbers here support what we saw last time. Again, this is why you go off data. Right? We hear a lot about all the development in town, all the places being built, but it's just the data is not showing the numbers, which is surprising personally.
Well, I'm wondering, are they showing the numbers enough that because other towns are dropping in enrollment?
Many towns are dropping in enrollment.
So I think we're maintaining because of it instead of dropping.
Yeah,
Good
you're,
point there.
the demographers will tell you it's more the slowness of the housing market in 4-bedroom colonials here in Simsbury. That market's not moving. People are staying where they are, and that market is very slow. And until that market changes, you're gonna see a very flat.
So a lot of this development we're seeing around town isn't, no, it's not 4-bedroom colonial.
Yeah.
It's actually
We have good data on what those numbers.
Yeah, no, I've seen the data you guys have brought, and it shows and this supports that.
Yeah.
Because I think you showed us data showed for all those.
Every
places that
complex,
built,
yeah.
What it's bringing in, it's surprising the units to the students.
Thanks, Neil.
You're welcome.
Next up is public audience. Seeing there's no public here. Move on. Again, our next board meeting is obviously January 13th. But again, next week, tri-board. I encourage everybody to come. It's always a very interesting conversation with the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance.
Bring a chair.
And I guess with that, we'll
I
entertain
make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town.
Bringing us together through local programming,
Education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.